Well, friends, we have another little anomaly to show you all. It has to do with perspective, or does it? Let's take a look.
Okay, I'm going to go through these particular series of photographs, and somebody has monkeyed with one. We're starting with AS17 134 2433. This is 2435. You can see this is the South Massive here. You're looking due west. The experimental equipment is here, and of course, the LEM and the rover. This is due east in the photograph. So that gives you a perspective of where they are on this physical movie set. You can see it nicely squared off to the corners, perfectly level all the way down. If this was supposed to be on the moon, you're looking at 9 miles across approximately here. And he's looking at 10 to 12 miles from where they're located to the west.
Well, I
So,
don't really think people understand just how far 9 miles is straight as the crow flies.
well, the other problem is you're on a ball, and if the ground is perfectly flat, you can only see about 1 kilometer because of the curvature of the moon. Here's another shot west. Now we're going southwest into the corner.
One thing I notice is that the perspective of that south ridge keeps changing.
Yeah, it does. Now this is 2438 from the official documents. This is the photograph. And then Robert's going to show you what he has for 2438, which obviously is a composite of the next three or four photographs. You're looking due south. That's the South Massive there. It's nicely framed in.
And you can see the top.
Yeah, nicely framed in. It fits nicely into the thing. And there's the whole thing.
The moon's south massive is approximately 2,300 meters or 7,550 feet high and measures about 7,000 meters or 7 kilometers across at its base.
Across.
Across.
So that's 5 miles.
Yes, so that would be 5 miles.
These are the three shots that show you the total length of it. They're saying across. This is the length.
Friends, does that look like 5 miles across to you? Because I'm going to put an image of what 5 miles actually looks like on an aerial map so that they can see what 5 miles looks like in reality.
When we're looking down here, we're back at this image 442. Here's the flag. Here's the experimental equipment, which is documented as being 625 feet from the LEM. Then here's a shot of the rover on two shots. This is the North Massive. Of course, this one you're looking due west down there, and you come down, and then it shoots back to the north. And what's the North Massive height?
The North Massif, a mountain at the Apollo 17 landing site in Taurus Littoral Valley, rises approximately 4,600 feet or 1,400 meters above the valley floor.
So it's half the height. Okay, and they're out in the middle because any of the maps show you where the LEM is located. Okay, so they're doing a panorama around here from north to south, and they both appear to be the same height. Nice little shot of the north, back down to the northwest corner, and we come back up and around. That's back to the South Massive there again, and then into the shot where they start shooting the shots of the flag. So we're back here. Now you're looking at the northeast massive, and that's pretty much the panorama that goes around there.
And now we can see the top of the massif again.
And we can see the height of it. We know what the heights are. You know you're in the middle of it. It's about 9 miles across. When you look at the map for Apollo 17, you're sitting 4.5 miles from each mountain and about basically 8 to 9 miles either direction from east to west. And you can show this image, and I have no idea where it is because it's 2038, and 2038 is just a close up of him setting down a piece of equipment. Particular photograph is now listed. As you can see, that it's a composite image, but it's being stated as 2438. That's credited by the Johnson Space Center.
Yeah, this is credited by the Johnson Space Center.
and a guy by Andy Saunders.
Yes.
They put together a composite of nonsense, eh? Look even smaller.
Here's the problem that I have with the South Massif in this image, because when we go to another image that was taken, this is what we get.
Yeah, but that's another composite.
Oh, this is another composite. Absolutely, it's another
Because
composite.
we just went through all the photographs.
The problem I have is that we could see the massif, the entire South Massif. We can see the entire South Massif in this image, and in this image, we can't. And this is the type of image that you would expect to see if you were near the bottom of this massif.
Yeah.
We would not expect to see this. So something is really wrong here. The entire perspective is out. You have to be kidding me. How can you get two different perspectives from the same images that you are compositing?
I don't know, but whoever's down there helping them certainly doesn't know anything about the photographs.
Even if I take this image and I zoom it in to try to fit all of this equipment in that they have over here, I can't do it.
No, like I said, we looked at the different photographs and what he's doing, setting that thing down, and he's moved it up closer because there he is with that piece of equipment and has moved back, still in front of the LEM. I mean, they moved him and the rover down a few 100 feet closer to the LEM in that, and suddenly the mountain got 3 times the size.
Yes. So what? Is some photographer going to come out now and say, oh, well, that's the pinch pull effect? Because they pretty much said that in that last article that we had up. They're taking the mountains and they're moving them and changing the perspective and all these other things. So what is really happening here? This just doesn't make any sense. When you're standing supposedly a mile and a half away from that massif, you should not be able to see the top of it. This is what you should see. And I don't care if you're 5 miles away, you're not going to see the top of that massif. Not when it's 7,000 feet high.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing they did do between those two composites is they completely laid out the rectangle that the set is at Flagstaff, and that's the same as in the press kit. Perfectly rectangular, flat area. It's somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 feet across that they practice on, and about 3,000 to 3,500 feet long, right on top of a landfill site.
Yes, but here's the thing. The rover hasn't moved, and neither has this
Nope.
piece of equipment that this astronaut is just placed on the ground.
Right.
And then you look at this image over here. There's the rover. There's the piece of equipment he just placed on the ground. Now, why is this South Massif so massive? The
Yeah.
massif is now massive.
Yeah, it's a physically demanding little piece of stuff.
What gets me is that none of this equipment has been moved. The only thing that has moved is the photographer, the person taking this picture. He is moved a little further out. Now, if the photographer therefore moves a little further out, you should be able to see the massif because the massif is now going to be further away. But he's out a little further taking this image, and now the massif just increased 4 times the size of it over here. You see, this is impossible, people. Not even perspective works this way. This is not reality. It's not. This can't be. This just can't happen. So when you're making the panoramic and you put the images together and you try to blow those images up to make them fit all together, you are still not going to get the massif there in the back like this. Not like he does on the other image, because what's going to happen is the further back you go, the further away you're getting from the massif. If you're getting further away from the massif, shouldn't the massif therefore shrink in size? And yet we see it over on this image, and the massif has now grown 4 times the size. Now, even if this image is blown up, even if they expanded this image, I'm going to show you. Because over here, I'm doing the same thing. In order to get this rover, the astronaut, and the LEM all in that one panoramic, you cannot expand the image to this size over here. because it won't fit. Everything will not fit in there if you do that. And yet, this is what we see. This is expanded, and yet all that equipment still fits in one frame right there. How
It's
is that possible?
the magic of editing, isn't it?
Oh, it's edited all right.
The distance a human being would be able to see on the lunar surface, if you're about 6 feet tall, you can see 1.6 miles. On Earth, you can see at 6 foot to your terminator line is about 3 miles. So it's about half, they're saying about half the distance. So if you're on a set that's far, the curvature, that stuff would disappear because you're only looking at 1,000 by 3,000 feet basically. It's just a level big football field is what they've set up. They just drop the mountains in there as shown in the press kit, that they can be moved into place and set up and moved up and down and sideways to whatever in the press kit. It's already shown there. Far too much information in the press kit. They went overboard on it. That stuff wouldn't be available.
You see, this is what happens when you post too much information on something. You take any subject, and when you post so much information on a subject that it becomes ridiculous to the point of absurdity, you have to start questioning these things. Because it's the same with somebody who lies. Do you see the stories and the detail that some of these people come out with when they're being questioned by professionals after a crime has occurred? When you have a professional interrogator, it's no different. These people are spewing the most minute details, and the details keep changing and changing and changing. The story changes, the details change. But some of these guys are so good at it that they have the details right down to the last hair on the ground that they pulled out of their brush the day before. So there's no way. I don't think that there's any way. And just like that, Apollo, this story changes because they keep changing the PDFs. They change things around in the articles. It reminds me of Apollo 11, where you have the original PDF. We look down and we look at the sunglasses pocket. The sunglasses pocket in the suit has been added. It's there. Then when we compare this to Apollo 8, it's not there. And I don't know how many times we've shown that. And it's just little details like that that change, and you have a big problem.
Not only that, Robert, we wrote a song. Show me how
Oh,
to wear these, walking on the moon. Go through our videos, find, show me how to wear these, walking on the moon. And then you can also watch our little music video of 50 ways to leave a footprint.
50 ways to leave a footprint.
Yeah.
All right, so we have another little dilemma here because we're taking a look at some of these LEM images. And one of the PDFs is claiming that there should be 30 inches from the last rung of the ladder to the bottom of the lunar surface. Now, when we measure the Apollo 11 LEM, we get 27 inches to the bottom because each one of those rungs are 9 inches between the rungs, from rung to rung.
Which is an unusual size.
Yes. Then when you go into ChatGPT, it says that there is 30 inches from the last rung to the bottom. That was to avoid the ladder hitting the surface. So it's 30 inches above. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go from Apollo 11. Of course, we're going to skip 13. It didn't land. But then we're going to go up to 17. And let's take a look just how much those legs have compressed or haven't compressed. And one thing that you're going to notice is that if the LEM's legs were compressed, we would see the foil around the shock. It would be crinkled down. And we don't see any of that. And then we get to 14, which has no foil around the shock.
Yeah. And that amount of foil is nearly 10 pounds per leg, that mylar. And if they didn't need it, that's 40 pounds. When you're looking at a launch of 1,000 pounds of fuel per pound of payload, and you can remove not just the 40 pounds, if you don't need it on the lower part of the leg, you don't need it on the upper part either. You're looking at nearly 200 pounds of mylar that doesn't need to be on there. if you take it off the legs. The Mylar is simply designed to hide the lack of technology. It hides a multitude of sins, is what the Mylar is. And they're still using it today. I'd like to make a comment to Kevin Conrad with his Artemis. I mean, right now, as we are recording, we are sitting in with the solar stuff that is near Carrington Event. And if you think you can go out there with your little Astrorad vest on because your head's fully exposed, before you get to the Van Allen belts, you are going to disassemble the entire craft. The speed that it's traveling to the Earth at is 1,000 kilometers per second. That's hitting it, and it's reaching like an electromagnetic pulse of 20 gigahertz. You try to imagine what's going to happen to the craft. It's going to simply vaporize. That's before you get to the belts because it's passing through. If you're in the belts, it's going to be more intense. If you're on the outside of the belts taking the full blast, you're simply there. I mean, they should just call the craft Icarus or something, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And these guys with the little fantasy land thinking that I can put a little tiny vest on with these little nodules in them, whatever these Astrorad things are, right? And you think you can leave your head sticking out of that?
Not going to happen, is it?
Yeah. And if they line the craft, I mean, you still got windows. Unbelievable. I don't think that if you're beyond 500 miles off the surface that the craft would even survive. Certainly the electronics are going to get cooked. If you could cook the electronics on the surface of the Earth with this thing, and you go up, and as soon as you get past our atmosphere already, you're already at a different level. If you start approaching the Van Allen belts, where they just divert them around the Earth, they change the direction of them. And that's the only thing that saves the Earth. If you think you can go in there with a craft of any kind, manned, unmanned, or anything else, right now, while this event is occurring.
I want to read this because I find this quite interesting. I just did a Google search. I asked the question, what did the Artemis capsule line the walls with? This
Yeah.
is what it has to say. For the upcoming crewed Artemis 2 mission, NASA planned to use supplies to line the walls of the Orion capsule to create a, quote, radiation shelter. Get this. Radiation shelter, pillow fort. To protect against solar storms, the crew will use equipment and supplies from stowage lockers to fill the cabin, essentially building a shelter. Wall lining material. Dense items, specifically bags of water and waste containers from the toilet, will be used to line the interior walls of the lockers to create a protective barrier. Now, get this one. In the Artemis 1 mission, it was aluminum-enhanced thermal barrier covered with reflective tape for Artemis 1. Aluminum-enhanced thermal barrier tape.
What kind of aluminum enhancement did they have? Did they put a special coating on it?
Velcro use. The food warmer will be attached to the walls or acoustic blankets using Velcro once in orbit. But this is what gets me. So a radiation shelter is actually referred to here as a pillow fort. And this is supposed to protect them against solar storms. And then they say wall lining material. Well, they don't really specifically tell you what that is outside of bags of water and waste canisters from the toilet.
Yeah, well, what if you don't give a shit? Then you don't have enough to protect yourself. When you read back in the older documents and you start realizing that little items like Velcro were truly a concern, because when you are in a vacuum and you have zero moisture in the air that you have inside the craft, when you pull a Velcro back, it causes static electricity, which if you have 80% oxygen in there, you're liable to light yourself on fire, right? And that was the concern with Velcro in the cabin. I mean, it's well documented on that particular stuff. So they're still using old technology. Why are they still using Velcro if it's that volatile inside a craft?
But this is what gets me, is that they're going back to the water situation, and we all know that that's exactly what they're going to need. Problem is you know how heavy water is. We all know how heavy water is. This craft would not get off the ground if they were to do that.
They need about 9 feet of water.
Yes. Well, that's just it. That's exactly what Jera said. Additional protection. Astronauts may also wear Astrorad radiation vests developed by Stemrad and Lockheed Martin, which are comprised of high-density polyethylene. In other words, plastic.
Yeah. So how do you cover your head? They don't even have a toque. They need a mylar toque, is what they need. Mylar foil.
Yeah.
Tinfoil hat.
Yeah, it gets more ridiculous by the minute.
Yeah, well, that'll keep them from seeing aliens when they travel to the moon as well. All of these events where all the astronauts now have seen aliens. They just like to put another layer. You have a beautiful story, bullshit, right? And then you write another beautiful story, bullshit on top of it. And eventually you have an entire steaming pile that is a beautiful story.
Which they can then place into the bags and then place
Yeah, they can.
into the interior walls.
That's
Here's
right.
what I would like to know. They're going to put all this water into these containers and they're going to put human waste into these containers and then they're going to place them on the walls. Okay, that's understandable. Here's the thing. How are they going to get that material inside of the walls? Are they going to undo all the paneling one by one and then place all the human excrement into the walls along with the water? Or is that already there?
Well, where are you going to put it? You're going to put it over the windows? You're going to put it over the control panel, all the switches that are inside that craft? I mean, the new ones, they're going to have, screens and everything else in there, right? You're going to just cover it with shit and say, there you go, now we're protected.
Well, what's going to be heavier, urine or feces?
Well, if you look at physics, girl, there is no mass when you're in space, so it doesn't weigh anything.
Oh,
You see how she does the equation? Just cancel the mass out, so it doesn't matter. To keep the human interest up, you have to create these fantastic stories. The human animal is so easily bored in today's world that you have to keep coming up with something else. So when you start off with a lie, you're trying to impress the world, you're trying to claim that you are the most powerful, most advanced society out there as an individual country, that you're that far advanced. So all of the advancements that they claim to have had in the 60s, the finest computers out there, well, why did another company overtake them? Why doesn't NASA, why aren't they producing the best computers on the planet? They're not even in the game. They come out with so-called all of these advancements in thermal insulation and stuff. Where the hell is it on the commercial market?
I'm looking at AS 1246 6728. I'm looking at the ladder and then I'm measuring the rungs of that ladder and I'm comparing that to Apollo 11. We can see that there's 30 inches from the bottom rung down to the bottom of that footpad when I brighten this image up. And again, we can see a lot of lighting at the top of the astronaut's head backpack, and we can see the reflection in the visor. That's a little bit of a problem. But what gets me the most is that you can see that it's very dark up there in the door frame. And when he steps down onto the bottom, his boots would be gone. That's how dark it is. But we don't see that in Apollo 11. We see Aldrin all lit up. But again, this is all we want to talk about is these legs. You don't see any of this foil crinkled, which means there's no compression on those legs. And there can't be anyways, because there's still 30 inches from that bottom rung down to the bottom of that surface. When you brighten the image up, you can see it. If the shock on that strut was compressed, then the foil would be crinkled.
Exactly. The same as the honeycomb inside is designed to compress.
Then look at the leg behind the astronaut here. We see an inner coating of that foil, that gold foil that's running all the way down that strut behind him. And there is not as much as one crease in that foil. So that leg has not compressed. This landing leg has not compressed because each one of those rungs are 9 inches from rung to rung, and when you measure that out, you have 27 to 30 inches. That has not compressed either. So now that's two images. That's Apollo 11, not compressed, and Apollo 12, it's not compressed. And we'll keep showing these images from different angles all the way around so that everybody can see that.
And the original, the leg itself has a honeycomb cartridge inside of it, and it has two cartridges in each leg. One is designed to compress down with 4,500 pounds, and the second one is 9,500 pounds. So just the weight of the machine, just to set it down on the lunar surface in lunar gravity, the weight of the machine there with the fuel tanks empty, the legs are supposed to compress to cushion the landing by 10 inches, just the weight of the machine. The total impact of the machine is designed to handle 3 Gs. That's 3/4 of a G for each leg. So the ladder, given the fact that the G forces, as stated by NASA, are between 1.1 and 1.8 Gs, that means that the ladder would have gone down anywhere between 15 and 20, 22 inches down.
And what I'll do is I'll put each individual strut as it's going around in a circle as they're taking it so that you could see all four struts, all four landing legs. There is no compression on it. And not only that, but you can also measure it from the bell housing down to the surface. There's no
Exactly.
compression, nothing.
You can measure it from the secondary struts down to the ground as well,
And that too.
because that's where the joint is. If you look at Apollo 14 that doesn't have the foil on it, that's where it slides down.
Because I'm looking at Apollo 14 right now, and there's no foil on the bottom half of those struts, and there's no compression on there either.
It's well documented how the legs operate. It's also described that, of course, there's no hydraulics, there's no spring to rebound to help level it back up. And you have to realize that the descent stage of the vehicle is actually the launch pad for the ascent stage. So it must be within, well, the documents vary between 12 and 15 degrees from vertical for them to be able to take off successfully.
One thing I've noticed is that Apollo 14 doesn't really have a good front shot of that LEM, though.
No, it doesn't.
But when you take a look at Apollo 15, again, there's the rungs, and I'm just looking at this, and I'm taking a measurement from the last rung once again. And we have 1, 2, 3. There you go, 9 times 3, 27. So where's the compression on those legs? There isn't any.
And that leg, just because they were kind of crocked over top of a bit of the crater edge there, that leg should be fully compressed.
But we would see that in the foil. It would be crushed.
The ladder would be right down to the foot pad,
Yeah, well, that's not
all the
what we
way down.
see. No, there is 27 inches still remaining.
Yeah. Actually, the way when you look at it, 3 of the 4 legs should be fully crushed down because they had the highest impact, number one. And the bell housing is crushed, sitting on the edge of the crater edge.
You can actually see the wrinkle in the bell housing.
Yeah. And that's apparent if you watch the landing video of Apollo 15. You can actually see the leg fly apart, like it breaks apart. Then you have the pictures showing the ball joints where they had to replace the leg, where they literally snapped off the vehicle. That's one of the reasons why they didn't erect the flag. They didn't do anything except they grabbed the rover and went for a tour because they needed to get people out on the set to fix this thing because it's probably sitting on that crater edge, rocking around with the legs broken off. And they needed crews out there, and they did EVA 1 and EVA 2. They didn't come back and erect the flag until the end of EVA 2. And that just doesn't happen. There is an American out there that wouldn't come out and erect the flag and salute it.
No, and then we get to Apollo 16. Now we take a look at the ladder again, and I'm just going to do another measurement on these rungs here. So
Yeah.
we have, okay, so there's 1, 2, 3. 27 inches again.
Yeah. Look at the bell housing for Apollo 16. It's only a few inches off the ground, and the legs are fully extended.
Yeah, that's not possible, especially when the ground is flat.
perfectly flat. It's only a couple inches off the ground, and the angle appears to be about the same as the other missions. If they went out farther, which they can't do because they come out and lock into position at that. Don't forget, that's another part of the problem. The legs come out and lock into position. And then, for some reason, the secondary struts can stretch in and out. If they lock into position, they're locked into position.
Actually, on the Apollo 16 LEM, it's 30 inches. And that's interesting.
It's still, the bell housing is just a couple inches off the ground.
Yes, and we still don't see any compression on those legs. Even the strut on the back isn't compressed when you look at this image.
Well, if you look at the G forces that occurred for each of the missions, and you realize that the way these honeycomb cartridges are designed to compress, and the fact that there's absolutely no way you can land on a surface and have an even force on each of the legs. One of the legs is going to be compressed a hell of a lot more than the other ones because one leg is going to land first. Doesn't matter how perfect your attitude or is anything else, the ground is not level. One leg's going to have a compression, and there is no spring to rebound it back up. You crush it down, it's just like crushing a pop can. That's exactly how they're designed to work, these honeycomb cartridges.
Then we look at the Apollo 17 LEM. Now let's take the measurements of the rungs on this one and see. Okay, so there's your first 9, there's your second 9, and there's your third. Again, there you go, 27, 28 inches.
Yeah.
And there's still no foil that has been crushed.
No, it's not wrinkled at all.
And this is for all of them, folks. There hasn't been one single leg that has compressed so far. Nothing.
People need to understand that when you look at the documents and it all looks fine and dandy, you read them through and this is how it's supposed to work and everything else. Like you're looking at the theory of operation on the thing. But when you can see it in a photograph that it didn't work, there is no compression. If you look at the theory of operation of a rocket engine and you see how much actual thrust is there and there's no crater. Okay.
Well, let's put it this way. We can see the flag being almost blown over in the Apollo 14-15 takeoff from the supposed lunar surface. You could see all the debris go flying out all over the place. Well, that same example can be used when these guys are landing because they actually have a 10,000-pound thrust rocket engine when they're landing. When they take off, it's only what, 3,000 pounds?
Yeah, 3,500.
Okay, so 3,500 pounds. Now that's a big difference. And we see what a 3,500-pound engine is doing to the flag, to all the debris. It's flying out all over the place. It's flying up on the windows. Well, what do you think a 10,000-pound engine is going to do when it's landing? It's going to put a crater in the ground, and I don't care if there's rock there with soil over top of it. It would blow the soil away and it would leave a circular pattern, and we don't see that in any of these images. And then people will say, oh yes, but it's in a vacuum, that's why. Well, take a look at all the debris flying around all over the place, and that's supposed to be in a vacuum. So that doesn't hold water either.
Yeah, even when you throttle down the descent stage engines, they can throttle it down to 20%. So to hover, you need 2,600 pounds of thrust, depending on what the actual weight and how much fuel you have left to hover. And you can idle it down to like 20% of that. So you can descend. To hover, you're going to be a little higher than that, depending on how much the actual weight of the vehicle is and how much fuel the descent stage has got left on it. So it's going to be 2,600 foot-pounds of thrust as you are coming down to the surface. And these guys that say, oh, well, we just turned it off and dropped.
If they turned it off and dropped, then we would see the foil on the outside of the struts all wrinkled up.
The legs would have more G forces other than what is stated. And one leg is going to compress 100% all the way down.
If that's the case, then we should see the last rung of the ladder coming very close to touching the surface. So in other words, if we subtract the bottom of the bell housing from where the rungs of the ladder should be very close to touching the bottom of the ground, of the surface. And yet there's still 27 inches to 30 inches on every one of these photographs.
Yeah, and that would make the bell housing within a few inches of the ground every time.
And we don't see that.
No. And then you see Apollo 16, the bell housing's almost on the ground.
So if the bell housing is almost on the ground, then how can you have 27 to 30 inches from the bottom rung down to the surface? That can't happen.
Well, that's a design error because when you look at the initial diagrams of the LEM, the bell housing is only 19 and a half inches off the ground when the legs are fully extended. That's in the original design.
Perhaps this is where the Artemis 2 crew got the whole concept from, or at least the engineers, because obviously the engineers in Apollo didn't give a shit either. There's no bags inside there for radiation protection that are filled with human waste. There's no water on the inside of it. There's no anything on the inside of those walls. And yet, how the heck did they get there, supposedly? And this Artemis craft now is claiming to have this plastic shielding inside the walls, along with water, along with human excrement. I mean, come on, give me a break. That's not going to work. As Jarrah said, you need 9 feet of water in a bubble encasing them all. Because, like you said, you can't put astrorad vests over your face. How's that going to work?
By the way, I looked at a little bit of the diagrams for Orion, which is the Artemis craft. Where's all the safety equipment for reentry? Apollo had reentry safety equipment. They had a life raft, they had a knife, they had a bunch of other stuff. They might even had some fishing gear in case you want to do some tuna fishing while they're out there. But they had all of the stuff when they come back in and land in the ocean to keep them alive. They had life vests, they had all of that stuff. When people tell me that the reason why we're not traveling to the moon today is because of the extreme safety concerns. Well, they better have this shit. If they decided they needed it before, why would they eliminate it? Like, if this vehicle is going to go down, you need to have an inflatable raft.
Oh, here it comes here. So let's take a look at what Google has to say about this. It says, yes, the Artemis 2 Orion spacecraft is equipped with emergency survival gear supply, including an onboard life raft and survival kits integrated into the astronaut suits for post-splashdown in the ocean.
Oh, that's where they are. That's why I can't find them on board the thing. They're integrated in the suit. Like the
Yes,
Astro Rad stuff turns into a life jacket.
perhaps.
You really want to get out of the water. There are sharks out there, buddy. And especially when they're landing in Hawaii, there's lots of nice great whites out that way.
So that's the same thing. They have our life raft, and it's the survival kits that are integrated into the astronaut suits. So they only have one big life raft here. That's it. Why can't they do what Jeff Bezos does and just land this on the surface of the Earth? Why does it always have to land in the ocean?
Well, Russia always did, right? Their returns.
Yeah, they had no problem landing on the surface. They didn't land in the oceans, and their parachutes carried them right down to the Earth, no problem.
Just get out the chopsticks and grab the thing.
Yeah,
On the parachute, when they throw on the parachutes coming down, just have a big plane with a net come and pick it up. Just like they did, the film. They could do it that way. Just grab it out of the air. Big fly swatter.
I want you to tell me, is this perspective or is this not? Because I found something very interesting when I was putting together the first 10 minutes of the video. I'll show you something here. And I'm just looking at this picture and I'm going, something isn't right. So what I did was I tried taking those three images and trying to get them together to produce the same effect, the same image this guy here had put up. Look where this equipment is here in relation to the LEM.
Oh, I know.
How can the astronaut be on the other side now, all of a sudden? And yet the rover and the mountains are in the same place. How can you get an image like this that is completely different, and the astronaut and the equipment are now completely on the opposite side of the LEM? And yet the hills are the same.
Somebody could look at that and say it's a different piece of equipment.
Oh, no, it's not. There's the
Oh,
legs
I know.
there.
I know. One's lit up a little differently. That's all. They look like wider leg or whatever. It is the same piece of equipment, but there is a shot where the bottom image, where he's got his hand down right on it, is exactly the same as the other image at the top. It's that same image is brought down. One, he's walking to it, the other one, he's got his hand on it. But that top image, you could see the same image with his hand right on it. Exactly the same. And yes, the different camera angle that you're looking at still can't put that equipment on the right hand side of the limb.
Nope. Doesn't matter how you do it.
Absolutely not. Now, if you compare the rover from the top image to the bottom, how the hell did that mountain get that much bigger? I don't care what the distance you are away from the rover. Those are approximately the same distance away where the photograph's being taken. And yet the mountain is 4 or 5 times different in size.
Yeah. It's way out of perspective, this.
Absolutely.